Welcome to Off the Guardrails with Corey and Shri, the podcast dedicated to demystifying AI without losing our souls. We are two AI professionals here to keep humans in the loop. That's you guys. I'm Corey, currently the AI tech lead at US News and World Report, not here on official business, where I've worked for 10 years building products like Best Places to Live. I've worked on the autos team, the real estate team, and now I work on the AI pod.
That's extensive. Hi guys, I'm Shri, currently an AI professional at US News itself. Me and Corey do have the opportunity to work together. It's been amazing, and I'm also a resident researcher pursuing my PhD in AI and cybersecurity. And yeah, let's kick things off.
Smart guy.
Thank you,
Well,
thank you.
okay. So so I'm going to kick things off with a little bit of a bone to pick. It's not a huge deal, but I want to take issue with some things we've seen. I want to start off by explaining to our audience kind of how memory works. And I just want to talk about when a user queries ChatGPT, they send a query into ChatGPT, and there's this concept called memory, right? And everybody's got their own personalized memory. And there are two ways for an LLM to access your memory. So I've very much abstracted this whole thing, but let's say you have your platform, and the platform can actually go access the memory and then inject that memory into your conversation with the chatbot. So it's like, hey, Corey asked about vans. He said something about vans. What else have we talked about vans? And so it retrieves that and it tells the chatbot up front. So that's one way. The other way is the LLM can itself retrieve the memory. And so, within this memory, this cloud of memories, there's all these little individual memories, and the LLM can say, all right, give me memories about this, give me memories about that, so on and so forth. Fairly straightforward, but I do feel like a lot of people don't understand that. And one thing that is key there is that never at any time does it have access to all of the memory all at once, right? Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that is the premise, and I want to switch over to this page here, and this is Anthropic's ad for transferring your memory from one LLM provider to another. And so this is one thing that keeps me in ChatGPT is that I have years of history with ChatGPT, and I don't want to lose that history, right? And so this supposedly gives you a way to import all your memories into Claude. And when you scroll down here, it's pretty simple process. You hit copy prompt, and that gives you a prompt that you then paste into ChatGPT or Gemini or another chat provider, and it outputs some text that you then copy and paste into Claude. So let's look at what this does and keep in mind how the memory actually works. It says, I'm moving to another service and need to export my data. List, emphasis mine, list every memory you have stored about me, as well as any context you've learned about me from past conversations. I have a big problem with this right here. I don't know. Do you as well, Shri? I don't know.
Yeah, I do. Like I've been struggling. Like the biggest example I can do is like I always try to give it context like, hey, I'm a professional researcher or a worker,
Yeah.
and remember that, and curate your answers like how I would expect it. But it always loses that context, or it always loses that, hey, am I a professional here? So yeah, I get the point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my specific problem though is we're telling it to list every memory when it cannot list every
Yeah,
memory.
yeah.
And yeah, you might have 1,000 memories like that, So anyways, blah, blah, blah. It tells it to output in a specific format. And it says after the code block, confirm whether this is the complete set or if any remain. So actually it kind of gives the LLM an out. So, if it can only access part of your memory, let me know. So I ran through this, and I've been using ChatGPT from 2023 up until now, 2026. And I ran this prompt, and it gave me a whole bunch of data about myself, which by the way is very personal and you don't want to share it. I'm not going to show it here. And yeah, very personal, the medical stuff, whatever you're asking ChatGPT about.
All
So
your insecurities and stuff. So,
everything, yes, lots of blackmail, lots of
yeah,
blackmail. I'm not sharing it with Shri. It stopped in 2020, in early 2025. It did not get all my data.
interesting.
Yeah. So there is this huge gulf where it just couldn't get it was only able to get like maybe half or maybe even just a third of all of my memories. So
Interesting. So
yeah,
is there like, a oh, is that a problem that maybe OpenAI has only data until 2025, or or did you realize there was more data that was existing before that as well?
There is a ton of data that was not included in it. I think it's due to the nature of how the memory works in ChatGPT that you cannot ask, like, just by its very nature, you cannot ask ChatGPT to get all of your memories and tell you something about all of the
Mm,
memories. It can tell you some pretty general things, but it will it at least as far as it exists right now, it can at most access maybe a year's worth of your memories. So you're potentially losing a lot of memory. And my bone to pick here is that I don't think they mention that anywhere in this ad, in this ad. So if you're not being careful, you could lose a lot of your memories if you do this.
yeah, yeah. Is it so? Like we work as a part of a AI team, and we experience this a lot. Do you think it is a prompt engineering problem, or it's more of a systematic problem from OpenAI side where it's limited to the data it can fetch?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a system problem that they did not design it to be able to access all of its memories. That
Hmm,
most likely they built in a sane limit that said, hey, at most you can access X% or X number or X date range worth of memories.
interesting.
Yeah, I think and thinking as an engineer, that makes a lot of sense because, I mean, maybe there's something else going on there. Maybe they don't want you to, but I could see certainly as you're designing the system, you don't want it to get 10,000 memories potentially in a single conversation because it may
Exactly.
bog down the system.
So you would say OpenAI has their guards up?
I'd say they have their guards up. Maybe at some point in the future, what I would like to see is an export and, export import. Let me export my memories to a standard format. And I will point out you can export your conversations. So if you do decide to do this, I would suggest you also export your conversations and
Yeah,
perhaps have
makes
a
sense.
game plan for doing something with those at some point if they matter to you.
Makes sense. This is
Yeah.
this is interesting. Like obviously, like I've tried that, but I didn't know these small keywords and all that stuff. But yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think about the people who have years of conversations and that are important to them, potentially losing their data and losing your data that'd be really sad.
Yeah, true that. True that. I got some exciting stuff. Most probably news is.
Hopefully less controversial on our end, at
Yeah,
least.
yeah. This is like I like as a researcher and as someone who is actually doing PhD. So I try to keep myself updated with the latest news and how enterprises are changing with all the new stuff that is coming out. So first of all, like the first thing that pops out or I want to talk about is like Mistral Forge, which is a really interesting innovation. So essentially, one of the biggest problems with like bigger organization or high level organization is like, yeah, obviously they have integrated AIs. They have integrated like LLMs with like RAG models with their own knowledge bases, graph knowledge bases, and etc. But at the end of the day, it's just an external LLM who has learned on its own data, which has its own bias, and you are trying to use that for your own like customized workflow, right? It can do its job almost 99% of the time, but there are going to be some pitfalls to how it performs,
Yeah.
as we have seen in our organization as well.
Well, I mean, 1% of the time can be pretty important if you're driving a car, if you can crash.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you for bringing it up. Bringing that analogy. So yeah, that's like. So yeah, like Mistral Forge essentially brings you a system or an easily intuitive system where you can customize models. Currently, only open source models or open weight models to your specific data, and you can easily host them or expose them to a specific endpoint, and you can run your specific like AI tasks within them. So this is kind of an competitor to OpenAI Frontier. But the biggest difference with OpenAI Frontier, and I do know a lot of people don't talk about this innovation specifically, is this lives within or you have more customization within your the implementation of AI or like the inference level of AI. The difference between like Frontier and Mistral Forge is OpenAI has its own LLM, so you can't retrain or apply training to its own model. It just acts as a kernel level like agent execution extraction or an orchestrator and works within your application layer to optimize your workflows. Whereas Mistral Forge allows you to like actually retrain the model or custom fine tune it to your specific needs or specific data. So it's a really interesting project. And I do see like a lot of like good like companies like ASML and DSO are using them. So that's like amazing.
Yeah, and so, one of the challenges with general purpose LLMs is, yeah, making them do what you wanna do in your corporate environment that might have very domain specific knowledge. So,
Certainly.
do you know what fields people are using this in? Are they using it in, like, the legal field or anything like that?
I have heard a lot of like not rumors but like specific policies that companies have put out that they are going to use it, but currently it's only being used by like these companies that are like listed here, like the ASML, European Space Agency and stuff. But I do see a lot of potential for people using this, even for, let's say, even if we want to host a local model for our own personal data. Let's say you finally get your memory out from OpenAI, you can train it on your own data, right?
Ooh, I
That's a
like
easy way
that.
to. Yeah,
Okay. So you could have a personal assistant that's trained on your own personal data.
exactly.
What kind of horsepower do you need to train these things? Can I train it at home?
If it is a smaller model, yes, you can definitely train it like on a normal GPU, like a standard GPU around like 3080 or 3070, or even like 40 series models. You can definitely train up to, I think, 100 billion parameter models. But anything more than that will like extremely struggle. And even 100 billion is kind of stretching the capabilities of these graphics card, but still, it will be at least like you could get there.
Is cool. So, is this like a full framework for bringing your institutional knowledge into Mistral? Like, do they help you sort of organize your knowledge and get it into a format? Is it like a
Yeah,
toolkit?
they do have data engineering capabilities as well, where you can clean your data, where you can organize your data for pre-training, post-training, and like these two things are like really different in a sense. Like for example, like you can see, like pre-training is mostly curating it towards a specific domain, like making it domain aware, whereas post-training is more about like refining the model for specific tasks and environment. So essentially, like let's say we want to train it for like a media business, which we know more context about. First need to give it like during pre-training, you need to give it like, hey, what domain am I working in, what kind of articles am I looking at, what kind of structured data am I looking at. And once that those neurons are built, like neural networks are built, during post-training you just refine what specific output do you want from this. So Mistral Forge, like in the earlier times, you would have to like specify this within a code or within an application layer of the final layer of the model training. But Mistral Forge allows you to do that quickly and easily through their interface, and you can just define what your expectations are out of these models.
Okay, interesting. So, I mean, it seems like it's early days for this specific thing. Do you see this as like a trend? Like we're going to see more and more like training oriented products?
I would say so. I've seen a lot of enterprise struggle, and we have actually seen our enterprise struggle with getting to that accuracy point with these LLMs. So I definitely think at a certain point there you might want to move into your custom fine tune models. But yeah, obviously the caveat is like you need a balance. Like how much investment are you willing to put in?
Makes a lot of sense. All right.
Yeah.
Hope to hear more.
Yeah. So this has been really interesting read for me. The other thing I was really interested to and I wanted to share is Google recently launched a new embedding model, and why this is amazing for me especially is in my side projects, in my other things that I've done. I used to set up like rack pipelines or ingestion pipelines with like different embedding models for different types of inputs. Let's say like text, audio, video, documents or anything else. I'd have to use like different embedding models and different vector spaces for all of that. But the introduction of Gemini model has made it like a Gemini embedding 2 especially has made it much more easier. Now, like this specific model helps me vectorize or embed all of these different streams of input into a single vector space. So let's say I have like ton of videos, ton of documentation about a single project. I can just feed it through this model and ask it queries from a singular endpoint or a singular vector space instead of having all different vector stores or different indexes. and
Yeah.
jumping through a lot of hoops. So yeah,
So you have like the sound of an engine, and you have like the word vehicle in Chinese, and you have a picture of my car, and those things can all be related to each other and like put into a search engine, and you can find these things within your data no matter what
exactly.
kind of information they are. That's incredible.
Yeah, and this solves a lot of like bottleneck for early adopters or early project scenarios where have to you struggle with like setting up rags and their own customization and or different configs for each of those input streams. But with this, you can like single-handedly work with different inputs. So this is amazing.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and big media companies with big libraries of content, but be it video or audio or text, can put all of it into the same model. That's really cool.
Exactly. Exactly. This has been interesting. One thing I do want to share one more when this has been like a recent incident. Let me just pull that up. So yeah, Meta recently acquired Moltbook. Moltbook, as you know, is an all agentic social media which was developed by the same founders of OpenClaw. And this it kind of turns a page where now we are seeing different AI agents talking to each other. And I do really see this as a critical point where our social media is kind of changing. We don't necessarily have content from humans, but also from like AI agents in a sense, right? And it is kind of what do we say? A give or take. It's like what you get is like you get more personalization, you get like different agents, different kind of context talking about, but there also comes a trade-off of like moderation. How do you call like moderate these contents? How do you like we have all seen like how like AI agents can be trapped in a specific loop. Do we get that here? Like agents talking to each other for like million turns of conversation?
I mean,
Is that
yeah.
way to but
How much
yeah,
energy are we How much energy are we wasting?
exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
what are they saying to each other? For example,
It's just like for example like hey, I'm an agent for Corey. I'm working on this specific task. I'm like privileged to do it, or like I'm happy to do XYZ. Or like let's say you ask it to create a specific meal planner for you, then you can like it's just going to post, hey, I created this meal for Corey and hopefully he likes it. This something like that. But I like Meta has not.
why do I want my bot like posting to that? Is it just for fun, just for kicks?
Currently, yeah. OpenClaw, like so, Moltbot specifically, we have been seeing that a lot of like AI agents just sharing what their current task is. But yeah, if people have been seeing that it sometimes share content that they don't want to get out. But yeah, it's a struggle. You
Yeah.
can't really like put bounds to it. But it would be interesting to see how Meta actually like works with it.
Yeah, I mean, what are they buying? They're buying a website that AI agents are the Reddit of AI agents, and the team behind it, which I suspect maybe the team is what they're really after here, right?
Exactly. Specifically, team and the framework behind the social media, specifically the algorithm in a sense, and how their messaging queue works in this, like in part. Yeah, not truly like yeah, a specialized social media in a sense.
Well, I mean, there's also a lot of money being thrown around on a lot of things right now.
Yeah,
Whether they're actually worth any money or not is yet to be
yeah,
seen. But yeah,
exactly.
interesting. Very curious to see if we actually hear how they use it.
Exactly, exactly. It's really interesting. But
Yeah.
but yeah, like I do want to turn the page. Being on the Meta's point, I do want to turn a page where they had a rogue agent go do some weird things. And let me just give you a brief background about it. So essentially, a few days ago, an Meta employee posted within their internal like engineering forum that he had a specific problem to work with, and he was not able to like solve it or fix it in a sense. So he just reached out for help. He posted on this forum that, "Hey, can someone help me?" And and another engineer, another employee who had his AI agent set up that was responsible for answering to this forum apparently picked this topic up and tried to kind of figure out a solution, and directly without even asking the second employee posted the solution or the fix that it came up with on the forum as a reply. And the original employee or the original colleague who wanted the fix acted upon its recommendation. And essentially, the problem was the fix kind of exposed all of their credentials and all the sensitive company data towards a remote or a specific endpoint. And Meta like classified it as SCV1 incident, which is their second highest severity level. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
I mean, did this engineer not read the code? Like, was there an explanation?
so from what I have read from like comments on social media and stuff around this, is like the engineer didn't know the complete context about this problem. So he was like apparently just like shooting daggers at it. And as a last resort, he reached out for help. So at this point, he had no more context to work with. And this AI apparently came up with a hallucinated answer and he just trusted it. And even like the second employee apparently had guardrails to ask it before posting anything, but it inadvertently like refused to do that and like posted his answer on the forum directly, which is super weird.
I mean, I think our biggest looming problem is trust. We are trusting things prematurely, and we are overly trusting things like that. And we'll talk about it later in the jobs report. But yeah, we're seeing that in real time, like how that is happening to our whole profession.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is not a surprise. I don't think it's a surprise to any of us who work with these tools on a daily basis that this kind of stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And I personally am on a crusade to tell everybody how important code reviewing is and how, you always need a human reviewing the code and case in point.
And two things to say about that as well. Like first one, like for this specific instance, Meta essentially blamed the humans or the employees specifically because they should have introduced guardrails or specific checks before they deployed these AI agents or accepted anything as an help. And second thing, for a similar organization, which is Amazon, as you might have like heard on news, like they recently flagged up a high security level meeting with their execs and essentially came up with a policy that all senior engineers or leads need to review each and every line of code from junior devs. Either it has come from AI or not, or come from a human itself. They have to do that because they have been seeing a lot of downtime outages and vulnerabilities come up because of the AI push essentially.
Yeah. I believe it. I think we need to reinvent the way we do things. And if you're not doing that, but you're using these tools, you're doing it wrong.
Exactly.
You can't just use these tools to replace the way you used to do things. You are also inventing an entirely new way to do things.
Exactly. And that brings me to a good segue of like doing new things interestingly with AI. Thank you for that, Corey. So, Allen Institute, if you might not have heard about Allen Institute, it's like a leading research institution in the US. It recently came up with its own AI model, which is a 3D model called Moltbook. And essentially, it helps you bring simulated AI, like simulated actions to like real world like robots. And the best thing about this is like it's an open source model. It's entirely trained on synthetic simulation data, and it apparently gathered 1.8 million trajectories it can map around, and it can be directly translated into a physics engine or a physical engine where robots can directly like plug and play it and work on a specific task that you want. And the biggest
Trajectory.
point
What
of
are
all of
trajectories? Hold on. What are trajectories in this case?
trajectories are like specific movements that you do. So let's say I want to pick a ball that is on my table. So I have to like lift my arm, move my elbow or move my like upper arm, move my wrist, and then go to this ball and then pick or like close my hands and pick up that ball. So these specific things are trajectories, like my from point A to point B, how much movements or what kind of movements I want to do. So
And can you define like physical AI? What is it?
so physical AI in a sense is instead of like an LLM that only, sorry, instead of an AI model or generative AI model that can only generate like sequence of text, here it generates like sequences of like 3D simulations or 3D vector outputs. So in a sense, let's say I'm starting for point zero zero, and my end goal is like going to like 100 comma 0, right? I need to map my trajectory around that. So this AI can predict how I can go, like go from 0 to 100, and like kind of if there are obstacles in between, if there are like triggers in between. In this case, like obstacles are triggers. So how
Mhm.
can I avoid triggers in that sense?
Yeah,
Physical AI is mapping this in 3D. So yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like, so my first degree was in animation, computer animation. It's like
Yeah.
keyframing in animation. Like when
Yeah.
keyframing, you define here's the start and here's the end. And in
Yeah.
animation, it would, it would just move the thing. But here you've got to, yeah, you're in the real world and you got to dodge around stuff. What are they doing with physical AI?
So this Molmobot specifically is bringing the simulation and the actual data to the physical world and making it easy for even smaller firms to use this AI model to kind of easily work with their robots and like reduce like redundancies and like yeah. So basically, kind of reducing the bottleneck for their end product. But to my other point, like to the physical AI point specifically, there is another version of how like enterprises are using this is gradient AI. And like I want to talk about this and simultaneously is like gradient AI and Amul. Amul is a dairy company in India, and Grady is an insurance company in the US. So they are both using physical AI models to kind of work or help their customers in. So specifically with gradient AI, they are like easing how they are doing insurance underwriting. So right now with insurance, or like how do you claim insurance, or especially for cars, you send like photos of your accident or photos of an incident. You send like police reports and all of that stuff. And there is a physical human that is verifying all of this and like adjusting the claims and stuff. With this kind of models, with physical AI models, they can do a 3D scan. Even with your mobile phone, they can do a 3D scan of your camera, 3D scan of the incident, and match it to a police report and actually make or like actually do adjustments based on like true specific data instead of just trying to estimate what kind of damage it is from like 2D photos. So this is like really game changing and really making it easy in the sense there are no insurance frauds, there are no unadjusted claims or unadjusted like insurance kind of things. So it kind of makes it easy for both the customer and the company to handle a
Mhm.
lot of these insurance things. So yeah, this
Yeah.
application is really interesting.
So this company would sell it to the insurance companies and then they can build that into their like consumer software, and then consumers can much more quickly get like answers about their insurance claims.
Exactly. And in terms of that, they can also like help them do like risk management as well. It's a later stage of these kind of models, but they help you kind of analyze what kind of things happened before a specific kind of incident, and they can implement that within their organization itself. So this is like
Nice.
really interesting.
Yeah.
The other company I was talking about, like Amul specifically, so they are using physical AI to solve like last mile hurdles of like rural farmers in India. So as you might know, in some parts of like rural India, there are struggles with like road infrastructure or facilities infrastructure or any kind of logistics kind of sense. So these farmers on their day to day struggle to bring their, like let's say, the milk from cows to a central processing facility where it can be treated and saved. And there was a huge kind of concern of loss or struggle there. So with this physical AI, Amul is trying to solve that last mile approach and improve logistics, improve the road structure. And even if there are like specific flags that they find within their logistics, they can working with the AI, they can improve it, and they can be up to date with all of those informations.
That's great. Are there any like specific problems that or specific use cases that they're solving with this?
Yeah. So specifically, one of the use cases that this blog and even their report specifies is especially with the road infrastructure. With this, like rural roads, there might be like weather related issues, like the roads might be flooded, or there might be damage to the road or something on the other. And the farmers need to find an alternative route to the logistics or the central processing facility. This physical AI can help you map and also analyze and avoid obstacles in the way and give you a new route that you can easily reach to their facility. Or even augment to that is like work with the weather and kind of give you like live weather updates telling you, hey, if you leave now, you can get to their processing facility on time. If you leave a bit later, you might struggle to do so. So it's kind of bridging or bringing a lot of these aspects to a system and building that complete system up for a specific use case. So yeah, this is really interesting.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I only have like a small inkling of the logistics of what it takes, to get me milk or cheese or, everything that I need to survive. And I'm sure this is going to be great for all the farmers out.
Yeah. And just one thing about this specific implementation is Amul has like over 2 billion points of data that they have like massed upon like more than 30 years of collecting it. This is a company who've been around for like ages, but yeah, like this amount of data is like really crucial for making this like a successful venture
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yeah. So they're not just like starting to gather the data that maybe it'll someday be useful. They've been gathering this data for decades. And I mean, it sounds like they're putting it to use right now.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very nice.
Yeah. Uh, but yeah, I do want to switch gears if you're okay with it.
Let's do it.
I do want to talk about security and yeah, like especially everyone you might have heard about Anthropic getting hacked. It wasn't like truly hacked. There was an attempt to hack Anthropic and gain access to its internal system in a sense, and essentially it was a state sponsored attack. Essentially, what happened? Like in mid September, Anthropic intelligence team detected that there was a cyber espionage attempt on all across their like 30 global entities by a state sponsored kind of entity. And the attack essentially was using their own coding tool, which is like Claude code, which was functioning as an autonomous agent. And it had access to like specific MCP tools. And these MCP tools were like network scanners, like password crackers, pen testing, automated like agent spin-ups. And essentially, with this attack approach, they were able to bypass like Claude's safety guardrails, and they were able to what we call in the industry like use a role play scenario where you essentially like, for example, tell your AI agent that, hey, you're Darth Vader and you are controlling the Death Star essentially. And yeah, it's kind of like you tell your AI to play a role, and using this tactic, they deceived the Claude code to say that, hey, we are a security company that are performing a cyber security analysis on this,
Yeah.
and we are authorized to do so.
Wink,
It was
wink.
exactly, and essentially they broke down the attack and like broke down the attack into isolated environments and was trying to do like vulnerability and like credential snipping there. And this got to a point where they were like using like almost like 80 to 90% of like Anthropic's capacity. They were essentially DDoSing these attacks.
Yeah.
And the crazy part is the humans, the attackers, only stepped in like around like 4 to 6 times just at a critical decision points during these attacks. So they absolutely handed all control to these autonomous agents, right? And they were able to break these guardrails as I discovered and like actually get to that core like uh, prompt retrieval and stuff. But by that time, like Anthropic quickly realized what was happening. They were seeing these high spikes of usage and like alarms going on their data centers and stuff. So they quickly identified these accounts and quickly banned them. And the attack was contained. But this goes to show like how crazy it is that automated agents can like hack into these like amazingly big companies.
Yeah.
So
So hold on just a second. So they were using Claude for espionage on another company, or they were using this to steal stuff from Anthropic? Where was the espionage? What were they trying to steal?
the espionage was on Anthropic itself. So the
Yeah.
main objective was to get any artifacts or any kind of thing from Anthropic's internal tool base or internal system itself. So they were trying to like DDoS and like actually gain access to that internal system.
And so you were saying they were having Claude like basically generate malicious code, and that was just part of the attack. Like it was just sort of a byproduct. Like it wasn't that they needed that code, that malicious code for something. It's the fact that they were creating the malicious code like
Exactly.
caused Claude to kind of malfunction.
Yeah, exactly. So they had their initial kind of insight, and I'm glad you brought the part like the actual like output part of these Claude sessions. So they had initial set of instructions on what needs to be done, and essentially Claude should have flagged these instructions itself because they were dangerous, but it apparently, due to that role playing scenario, it kind of broke down and it executed all the commands that were being fed to it. But to your point,
Yikes.
Anthropic also like so. This is the blog post that they have on their website. You can deep dive. There is a uh, like read report,
We'll share
and
the
you
links
can
in the description here too.
yes, definitely. And if you read in this report like very carefully, Anthropic does say that they had like one good thing about this attack, which is like AI actually hallucinated during these agents, and it made up credentials, or it made up some kind of code that that forked or that kind of failed and was trying
Yeah.
to redo a lot of stuff, which in turn helped Anthropic identify that hey, someone was trying to do that. Yeah,
Well, and so that was interesting to me when I heard about this earlier, is that they like a big part of this attack was filling up the context. Is that right? Yeah,
yeah,
and
yeah. Filling up the
as
context
I've
and
found, yeah, as I've found, when you fill up the context, that's when it starts hallucinating. So it's sort of like it seems like that the attack isn't really going to work in the first place because you're filling up the context. Even though that sort of
exactly.
lets you attack it, you're also getting crap data because of hallucinations.
Exactly.
That's
And
great.
just to give you an idea of the scale, it was like more than 200 plus agents working in parallel in like different Cloud Code sessions, which was controlled by a centralized Cloud Code session. They were actually multiplying that. So
Okay. Okay,
they created
wait though,
MCP.
Shri.
Yeah.
How do we know that Claude wasn't behind this in the first place? How do we know it wasn't Claude all the way down?
We don't know, right?
You
Because
know,
they
there's
don't specify who was the state sponsored kind of
yeah.
entity, right?
Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, like it's a funny thing. Thank you for that. But yeah, I was just saying, like they they essentially created this MCP servers where it can spin up these different sessions and manage these different sessions. So it was kind of like a call out session, creating babies and then managing them to attack something.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy. I mean, were there grandparents? Were there grandbabies?
probably
Yeah, no, I
the
mean, that is
family tree.
interesting. But yeah, the recursive functionality and having one agent manage other agents. I mean, that's a good thing for, enterprise where you're trying to orchestrate big, tasks where you need a bunch of agents working on stuff, but it can also be used for this sort of thing, which is very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. Now, the
Fascinating.
biggest learning from this, and the last point I want to talk about, is like uh, human in the loop. You need human reviewers. You need actual like humans writing like safety guardrail stuff. Cannot fish this responsibility out to an AI agent or anyone else specifically. You need to think about these edge case scenarios and work through it. So yeah, this is the really interesting find. I recommend you to read this complete report, especially if you're working in the AI field. But yeah, and there is one last thing that I do want to talk about, and on the similar point of security, let me scroll up to this. There is a company called OSS Security, and they do a lot of research on like pen testing, on security testing for companies. And essentially, this specific incident or this specific scenario that they showcase here in in their report, which they call is like Cloudy Day.
Bloody day. Nice.
Yeah, great name, right? Summarizes that it was a sophisticated prompt injection targeting for Claude AI, the chatbot, not the Claude code that we earlier were talking about. And this was not traditional hacking in the sense. It is what we call like they were what do we say like using an open redirect attack, and exposing the open redirect vulnerability. So essentially, like just to give you a context, open redirect is where you can insert some malicious parameters within the existing like domain
Uh-huh.
URL, and
Uh-huh.
you can redirect to a specific like backend or specific, what do you say, like session, and you are able to access a lot of those internal artifacts. So essentially what they were able to do is like with the Claude.ai URL, they were able to append chat sessions or chat IDs, and they were able to create a demo kind of interface where, or a blank chat session. But on the back end, it was actually passing all the data or all the fetch data with this URL. So essentially, from what users would see is you would see a blank page or a blank chat session, and you would say like, "Hey, I'm talking to a blank kind of canvas, right?" But as soon as you type something, and as soon as like Claude responds you with something, it is actually in the backend connecting to a specific chat session that you might have, and all your data and all your chat history is being exported to some other like remote server or
Ooh,
something.
oh no.
Yeah,
Which, as we established earlier, has a lot of personal information in it. Very bad.
exactly. Exactly. So they were, so like I'll show you the prompt itself. So they were able to like append this prompt to the redirect. This you won't see, or the user won't see on the front end. This was all happening on the back end or behind the scenes when you're typing in your first message in the blank chatbot. But yeah, like this word was able to like retrieve open like the open AI keys, sorry, the Anthropic open keys and all its chat history and everything, and they were sending it back to a remote server or something. So, yeah,
I guess so in this case, in order to land the attack, like you need somebody to click on a malicious link
yeah.
to
So let's
Claude.
say,
So,
yeah. So let's say I was like, hey, Corey, do you want to like, have you tried Claude? I'll just send you a link. It would look normal. Like, hey, this is Claude.ai. Everything looks normal. There would be something, or I could like just shorten the URL as well. But actually, there is something with the URL that's being sent. So as soon as you click on it, you would see a blank chat session, nothing else, and you'd start to see, oh, hey, I'm going to type a like a normal message or talk with it, right? But actually, on the back end, all your data or all your stuff with this prompt is being sent, and it is just being retrieved by or sent back to a remote server that I set up.
so is a lot of this problem on the like front end side of Claude?
Yeah. Most of, I would say 90% of the problem is on front end side. 10% of it is like guardrails and prompt checking essentially from like Claude side. So these all prompts go to a specific backend where the LLM is hosted, right? There needs to be like specific checks or systematic checks where all of these can be filtered out or can be flagged even before going to that LLM. Yeah.
Well, interesting. So,
Yeah.
as always, be careful what links you click on.
Yeah. So like just final thing, like here you can see like you're talking with like normal agent, but you will see on the back end like the agent, like the attacker is getting all your chat inside and everything that you're hooked onto. So yeah, really interesting. I'll highly recommend you to like deep dive into this.
I mean, I would say scary stuff. You know, you just got to be aware. If Shri
Exactly.
sends you a link specifically, don't click on it because apparently, you know, he's the guy who knows all these exploits.
Yeah, I want all of your memory, not only from OpenAI, from Anthropic too.
You'll know all my secrets. You'll know all my secrets. Although it can't access all of them at once. Hopefully. All
Exactly.
right. So let's talk about this job report,
Yeah.
or labor market report, which I think has frightened a lot of people, understandably recently.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting seeing it from our perspective because in a lot of ways our profession has been one of the first to be automated by AI. So let's talk about it. Let's you know, there's a lot of articles about it, but I want to look at the actual report itself and look at what they're trying to do and what they actually say about all this stuff.
Yeah. I'd love to see it.
Awesome. So the title of the report is Labor Market's Impacts of AI. And I think the subtitle is key. A new measure and early evidence. And early evidence. So I'm going to just scroll down a bit. So let's just get some text out of the way. So it is possible that the impacts of AI will be unmistakable. This framework is most useful when the effects this framework that this paper's talking about, it's most useful when the effects are ambiguous. That is, when you can't see the effects, obviously. and it could help identify the most vulnerable jobs before displacement is visible. So,
Yeah.
The intent of this is, which jobs are at risk right now that are maybe not as obvious, Okay, so exposure. So when we talk about this, we're talking about exposure, and exposure is typically defined at the task level.
Yeah.
AI can grade homework, but it can't manage a classroom, for example. So teachers are less exposed than workers whose entire job can be performed remotely. So us, I am a remote worker. So, my job is more exposed than somebody who has a physical job that they must be there physically for. Okay.
Exactly.
So the entire point of this paper is to measure exposure, and they measure exposure from 3 different sources. The ONET database, which is sort of a database of occupations and tasks, Anthropic's own data, and an interesting data set, the task level exposure estimates from Elondu et al., which measures whether it is theoretically possible for an LLM to make a task at least twice as fast, which I think is a great measure. And so you look
Interesting.
at this, you're not just measuring, can't it do this thing? It's just like,
Yeah.
can it make this task twice as fast?
Yeah.
And so when they look at the different tasks and whether they can absolutely be made twice as fast, whether they need some sort of help, or whether they can't at all be made twice as fast. 68% of all tasks with an LLM alone can be made twice as fast.
Interesting.
5%, which is a lot. All tasks that they're tracking. Grading homework is a task. 29% let's see, what is it? What did they say? It's feasible with the help of software or an LLM.
Yeah.
And then 3%, it's just you can't do it with an LLM. Either you can build all the software you want, you can't do 3% of tasks with an LLM, which
Interesting.
that's a very small number of tasks, I have to say.
Yeah. Yeah. And these percentage are all like based on the like Elondu's report, or like bringing all those 3 together.
Yeah, so this figure right here shows usage distributed across the ONET task groups. So this actually brings together 2 of these data sets, the first one and the third one. Yeah, because I guess ONET is like a database of tasks. And actually, here's a really good example of a task: authorize drug refills and provide prescription information to pharmacies. That is fully exposed. You can easily. It is important to point out, as they have here, they have not seen Claude performing this task, but Claude could perform this task, and it does not need any external help or new software to do it.
So as it earlier said, like it only works on ambiguity. So essentially, it's more predictive, right? Instead of like back, sort of like back propagation.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So there's kind of the estimated exposure that we could have. This is like how far it could go.
Yeah.
And then there's, the actual observed exposure. So this is Anthropic's new measure. It's meant to quantify of those tasks that LLMs could theoretically speed up, which are actually seeing automated usage in professional settings.
Interesting.
Right. So that tells us, where are we? Where are we at? Like, we could be here. Where between 0 and there are we for each different occupation? And that brings us to this chart, which I think is really the meat of this whole darn thing. And this shows, for all of these different fields, where could we theoretically be, which is what this blue area is, and where are we right now? And so what this is if you start in the middle here, this is 0%. And if you go all the way out to the edge here, that is 100%. And what this is saying is that for the computer and math profession, people like me and Shri, we are over 90% exposed, meaning that over 90% of our tasks could be sped up to 2 times by an LLM, potentially with an extra, tool or something. But that's the reality of the situation. Where we are at right now is, this line right here is 40%. We are at about 30, mid to upper 30 percentages.
That's still a huge percentage.
It's a huge percentage. And I think we feel it acutely because of where that percentage really is. Like I don't know when the last time you wrote a significant amount of code by hand is. but it's been
Yeah.
over a year and a half for me. I kind of keep track because it's an interesting figure. Actually, I'd say about a year.
Same for me. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and for me, I can mark it actually when Claude 4.1 came out. That's when it really started getting good at at a lot of the things that I used to do that I haven't done since. And that's what it looks like where we're at. We still have jobs. We are doing different tasks. We have different tools. Our jobs look very different. I tell people my job no longer exists just because the tasks I do are so different than they used to be.
Exactly.
We're reinventing a lot of things, and to me that's where a lot of sort of when you get to this point where you've partially automated, you've partially integrated AI into a lot of your tasks.
Yeah.
You need a whole new way of doing things, and just because the red is at 37% doesn't mean we are no longer involved in 37% of our tasks, right?
Exactly.
And I think that's an important lesson for people who are seeing their own careers here, on one of these axes that has a lot of blue. And I feel you.
Yeah.
If you're in arts and media, and my advice is to pay attention, lean into it where you can.
Yeah.
Don't buy into the hype too much. There's a lot of people who are really overselling stuff, and
Exactly.
I don't want to say there's a bubble because I feel like that's a very loaded word, but I feel like there's a lot of VC capital being thrown around for stuff that either doesn't work very well or doesn't quite do the thing that it says or is going to go out of business, So,
It's a game of hope, right?
what's that?
It's a game of hope.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's a long way to go, and it's impossible to say, if this blue area is even accurate. We don't know that. I think the red area is probably fairly accurate. This is, I think they probably have a pretty good idea, Anthropic, of how people are using their own tool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a long ways to go, and it's been a wild ride so far. I think being in computer and math, we have a very enthusiastic cohort. A lot of our colleagues are, embracing this stuff, and I think that in a lot of ways has carried us forward and into that 37% area.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be true for everybody. And I think it's very possible that some will be much more difficult to get to that point than for our profession, because for us, you think about documentation and the fact that a lot of the tools you and I work with from day to day, Shri, are open source, and the documentation's out there on the web, and we've basically set our profession up for this sort of success where the agent can go out and read that stupid documentation that I used to spend hours reading through, which I am so glad that it does that, but not every profession is going to have the benefit of that. Even within even within computer science, there's people who work on really esoteric stuff that has no documentation, and I'm sure that coding agents are not as effective.
Exactly. Especially with COBOL. If you might not know, there is a huge COBOL shortage. Industry is actually looking for people to code in COBOL and work with these legacy robots or automation stuff that they have built, and they literally can't find people to do that.
There you
AI
go.
can't do that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So there will always be work for us. I have yet to see an end of it, but I want to keep an eye on this, and I hope that they come out with more versions of this so we can come back to it and maybe compare and contrast.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm really interested into take a deep dive, maybe on separate note in this report, because especially we most of the industry does talk about math and computers and office admin and stuff, but social sciences or any other leads, it's uh really tricky to get these automated, or really tricky of not only get automated, but how AI can augment things. It's a huge gap in understanding of how we can curate these existing system to those. So
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Each one of those professions is a whole world unto itself and a whole set of challenges for sure. Well, more to come, and I'm so glad we're here to talk about it, and I'm excited to talk more with you in future episodes.
Yeah, I'll definitely have something interesting to share next time.
Sounds good, my friend. Well, if you're still with us out there, we appreciate you tuning in, and we hope to see you next time. Yes, heart, heart. Yeah, check out the description for links to everything we've talked about, and we are hoping to be back next week. Thank you very
Like,
much.
share, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
See you guys. Bye.